Hey everybody, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside College Soccer. This week we're going to talk about a subject that is maybe besides junior college, this might be one of the most misunderstood um, divisions of all the division. That's Division Three and what Division Three really means. Fortunately, I spent a good number of years coaching Division Three out here on the West Coast. It gave me a good sense for what it was, but I would far and away not consider myself a preeminent expert on Division Three. What I realized when I started doing this job in 2018 was that Division Three is so different on the East Coast and up in the Northeast and than it is out here on the West Coast. And some areas of the country don't have hardly any Division Three schools at all. So it becomes an issue of, like I say, of a misunderstanding of what Division Three really is. So we've got somebody with us today, Karl Barkley, and Karl is don't think he's related to Charles, but sorry, just kidding, Karl. Is one of the Division Three experts on X that on Twitter that I've followed for a long time, and a very good friend of ours that works with us, Steve Rollins, says that Karl's by far and away gives some of the best division advice that he's ever seen. And so I thought we'd have him on with us today. Welcome, Karl.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Don, and thank you to Steve for the helpful word of mouth rec. You'll have to introduce us after this.
Yeah, he's great. He's out in D3 land of the Northeast, up in there. He's in New Jersey. And it's funny that many of the players that he's been around and coached, very high level players, uh, they don't want to go Division One. It's the Division Three world of the NESCAC and the NUMAC and these upper level academic conferences that those kids are chasing, and high level athletes that are chasing those schools, and the Johns Hopkins of the world, and the Swarthmores and the Bates and the Williams and those schools that most of us out west, honestly, unless we're researching or somebody's been from the East Coast, we've never heard of those schools. And so I thought we'd have a conversation and walk through the Division Three world a little bit. Give everybody just a little bit of your background and how this concept of D3 Direct came about and what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah, well, I guess it all kind of started back when I was in high school and was going through the whole process of what you just mentioned, trying to find where I wanted to go to school. And I grew up in North Carolina and went to a big public school, and where basketball was pretty strong. And so I had a lot of teammates that were getting, letters from Division I schools every week. I'd walk into the locker room and I'd pass my coach's desk and there'd be a stack of letters. And I just kind of knew that none of them were for me because I wasn't getting that type of look. And but yeah, eventually I was talking to someone about academics, and they said, well, there are these smaller schools, liberal arts colleges that have Division III athletics, which is not quite Division I, it's non-scholarship. And so based on that recommendation, started exploring that on my own and went through this whole process, tried and failed, emailing some coaches, got a lot of no's, got a few yeses, and ended up going to Swarthmore College up in Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia, to play basketball, and had an amazing experience on the court. Met some of my lifelong friends, and yeah, had a great time building a program there. And I think what I realized, it didn't hit me until I guess I started this project during COVID, when I think a lot of us had time to think, and there wasn't a whole lot going on, and I was just kind of reflecting on the value of the experience from my perspective, what it gave me, not only from the school, from the athletics perspective, but then at that point it was 5 years out of school, and the network and all the opportunities that I'd gotten just because I had a Swarthmore degree. And I was helping my roommate at the time, her little sister, with her college selection process. She was a college basketball recruit, and she wasn't sure how to do it, how to find coaches, how to pick different schools. And so I just hopped on the phone with her one night and was like, happy to help if you need it. Cause I overheard her talking to my roommate in the other room, and ended up helping her pick a school. She went to Grinnell, and I not only enjoyed that experience of kind of helping her walk through it, but I was like, oh wow, I might have some knowledge here that would be fun to share. And so just started out by getting on Twitter, or X now, and for 30 days I said, I'm going to commit to sharing one piece of tangible advice to kids that are struggling with the recruiting process because everything was remote. And I had a blast and have been doing that for 4.5 years now.
Right on. Yeah, I stumbled across you probably, yeah, about 2 years ago, I guess, and I've put you in my feed immediately and followed you. And I love hearing the advice. We have this in the world of soccer. Most of the kids that we notice on X are at big clubs. They're at big clubs. They're in ECNL clubs or MLS Next clubs. They're in the top clubs. They're not promoting themselves. And we notice this mentality that we call D1 or bust, right? If I'm going to play D1, I will go D1. If I can't go D1, I'd rather just quit. I'd rather not play. We can talk about what I think that means deep psychologically in players, but maybe I just like to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions of what D3 is. That it's these some of the things that I've heard, and we can break these down one at a time. First off, is there's no way I can afford a Division 3 school. I need a scholarship to be able to afford to go to school, so I can't afford a Division 3 school. I want to go to a school with really good facilities, and Division 3 schools they don't invest in athletics. They don't have good facilities. I want really good facilities. I want to play at the highest level possible. D3 isn't a good level. It's third or fourth tier. And so I don't want to play Division 3. I want to play Division 1 because I want to play at the highest level possible. Maybe I have pro aspirations. I want to challenge myself. So I want to play. Those are probably the three most common themes that we hear. And if maybe you'd like to address those for us just one at a time. What about the
Yeah,
money piece? Because they don't offer athletic financial aid, right?
correct.
So
Correct.
so the idea though that we can't afford a Division 3 school because I've got to have money to be able to afford college. They look at the sticker price, right? And if we Google the name of a school and you put in cost of attendance, almost any school in the country, it gives you what the sticker price is of that school. And yes, it can be scary when you see an $80,000 price tag pop up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is the primary concern for most families, right? When it comes to choosing a college is cost. And frankly, the cost of college has gotten out of control if you look at sticker prices. And I just picked a school in in California where you said, are you in California? You said the
Yeah,
West
yeah,
Coast.
we're in California, right?
Okay, so doing a quick exercise here, I just Googled Pomona Pitzer tuition cost, and when you search it, it comes up with the 2022-23 numbers, which is $61,000, which for the vast majority of families in America is not possible to afford. And so, to your point, a lot of kids adopt this mentality that they've been told that an athletic scholarship is the only way to get a free or reduced, tuition to schools that they would want to go play in your world soccer at. Um, I think one of the big things that we try to promote at D3 Direct is one, just reevaluating the whole premise of a D1 athletic scholarship. Because as you're, I'm sure, well familiar, in soccer, not every scholarship that's going to be offered is a full ride. Soccer is what's called an equivalency sport, if I'm
That's right.
not mistaken. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Men's football, men's basketball, and I believe women's volleyball are
Women's
the
basketball, women's volleyball, and I think women's gymnastics
women's gymnastics.
are
Okay,
the head count sports. Yeah.
correct. And those are the only ones that can guarantee full ride scholarships for the entire team, if I'm not mistaken. And so the tricky part then is helping kids understand, okay, if I get a D1 offer, what does that actually mean? And the word you used earlier was effective tuition rate. And that's, I think, the key for any family out there is once they have offers on the table, once they have schools that they're evaluating for the recruit, is think about effective tuition rate, because a Division 1 school might offer you, might have a tuition cost of 50K and offer you a scholarship that's a half scholarship, so you're paying 25,000. And a Division 3, let's keep using Pomona Pitzer, might be able to offer you, a lot of merit aid, some kind of grant from the school. If you're from California, they might have a state specific program. Then, of course, there's FAFSA, which is federal financial aid, or at least the form that you fill out to get access to that. And then all of those things could result in a lower cost of tuition than what you would get with the Division I scholarship. So I think that's one of the things that we just try to encourage kids to look beyond that initial number, and do a little bit of research on the cost front. The next question you raised was facilities. I just got back from Calvin University in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and they again met up with the AD, and he gave me a tour of the new football facilities they just built and the new soccer stadium they just built, and it is pretty sweet. And not something, I grew up near Davidson College, which is in North Carolina, and I would say the facility they have at Calvin, is just as good, close, like right on that Division I level. So again, it's a school by school thing that before you rule it out, always worth just going on site and seeing how the school invests in their facilities, how the school treats their athletes, because everything's going to vary on a school by school basis, just like the cost piece. And then the last one is the highest level possible, which, I mean, I think, it's Division I is going to be the highest level. You're going to have the highest percentage of players going pro out of that. I think when it comes to the natural thing for your mind to do is to say, okay, well, then Division II is obviously next, because 2 comes after 1 and then 3 comes after 2. But it's not as, depending on the sport, it's not as linear of a trajectory as a lot of people, I think, would imagine. And I'm most familiar with the world of Division III basketball, and since I started following this in the middle of 2022 really closely, there have been a ton of players who have used that as a launching pad to go play abroad in Europe. Obviously, people are very familiar with Duncan Robinson in the NBA of the Miami Heat. He used to play at Williams College in Massachusetts, and then there's a guy, Ryan Terrell, who played at Yeshiva University in New York City, and he was in the G League for a little while, as well as Sam Peake, who was at Wesleyan, and he was in the G League as well. So there is a way you can get into U.S. pro leagues, but I think, you're gonna have higher odds at the Division I level, but those opportunities in Europe that are less talked about, less promoted, I think are very available for those at the D3 level if you are a high level athlete.
It's funny. So, I completely agree, by the way, and just so nobody that's listening to this thinks that I'm crazy. Yes, most of the pros are going to come out of the Power 4 schools. Okay?
Of course.
That's where they come from. But there's also, I never like to throw out real names of real schools because I don't want to disparage anybody, but Alaska State University, if they're Division I and they're the worst team in the country, and then it's not necessarily where a pro is going to be looked at out of. So look, in the world of soccer, and I know basketball is the same thing. Look, every sport's the same way. You have your top tier half of 1% of the Division I athletes that are truly pro level athletes, but then you've got these mid majors and lower Division Is and athletes that probably they weren't good enough, and maybe they develop into something, but they're probably not going to be good enough to play pro. So then why are we going to school, right? I always say a good friend of mine, Bruce Murray, who's in the U.S. National Team Hall of Fame. He's with the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame and played with the national team. He said something that just really stuck with me in a conversation with him. And he said, look, going to college was the opportunity for me to not have to stop playing. I wanted to continue to play. And that's the way he looked at it. I thought that is so healthy to look at it as a continuation and then let your play develop into whatever it is. If it's national team level or in soccer or professional level, then your play will determine that. If you're an All-American, people will consider you for the next level. But if you're in soccer, if you're the 17th player on your 8th place team in your, 12th best conference in the country, what are we talking about? You're bang on average, right?
Right.
So then I think there's more to it. If we accept that, I think if we accept that premise, then it's about what can we do to go on to the next level and find happiness, right? Find a place that we fit, find a place that feels like home to us, that we can get our education and continue to play the sport we love.
Yeah, no, like the right perspective. And what I would add to Bruce's advice is, use that time in college to, yes, advance your playing career, have a chance to grow. And I would say at the Division III level, you're probably going to, if you are truly on that cusp of Division I, if you go to a Division III school as that higher touted recruit, like I think you're going to jump in and get more playing time, get more reps. Whereas if you try to go above your athletic bar, which we're all for reaching, like bet on yourself, invest and commit to that if you think you're going to develop into it. But you're probably going to end up sitting on the bench if you for those first 2 years while the upperclassmen that have paid their dues are out
Right,
there working.
right.
But I think the other side of it too, you talked about like setting yourself up to find happiness in the rest of your life. Playing pro is wonderful, right? But the greatest professional athletes, let's use LeBron James, who is, you know, uh, or Cristiano Ronaldo, these people who have, or Marta, who just won, the NWSL. Um, these athletes who are into their late 30s or early 40s, who have, they are the exception to the rule in that they have played till they're 40 years old. So most people nowadays live way longer than 40. Uh, so you got to think, you can't put all your eggs in the I want to play pro basket, because then if you've never thought of anything else at the age of 40, if you have the most amazing pro career ever, you're going to have, a lot of life left to live where you haven't thought about what's next or what else you're interested in. So the piece I would add to Bruce's advice is not only use your school time to advance your sporting career, but use your sport to get yourself into the best school possible. Um, that was my case at Swarthmore. I mean, I had great grades in high school, but the kids who were trying to get in, had excellent SATs, excellent GPAs, and I think you should look at your sport as an incredibly good extracurricular activity that you can piece together with the grades, you can piece together with your test scores that can really get you into that reach academic school that will then give you the network and connections that after your pro career is over, you'll be able to use and really try to find fulfillment and that happiness afterwards.
Yeah, no doubt about it. A couple real world stories that came to my mind real quickly as we're talking about money. And I was sitting in my office, coaching at a junior college was my last gig. And I was sitting in the office with one of my players who had two Division III offers in the Pacific Northwest. And one of the schools, all said and done, was coming up about $20,000 out of pocket. And the other school, all said and done, was coming in at like 12, 13 out of pocket. And money mattered to her family. They didn't have unlimited resources. And so she came into my office and said, I think I've decided on the other school, even though I'd rather go to the $20,000 school. The $12,000 one's probably the move I'm gonna have to make. Let's make a phone call. And so we called the coach at the $20,000 school, and he says, have you made a decision yet? She goes, well, emotionally, I think I have. Like intellectually, I think I have. He goes, don't do anything until I call you back. Just hang by the phone. 30 minutes later, he came back and he said, how would it be? What if we got it down to 6? And I thought, well, how does this work? And it made me realize there is no athletic financial aid.
No.
But sometimes a president or an administrator can relook at a player's profile. And sometimes they can find internal money within the school that can reduce that. I know coaches can't influence this, but I think coaches have asked and can ask administrators and admission officers and financial aid officers to take a look at a player, and they can find money for that kid. So it's like, oh, there sort of is unofficially money out there at a lot of schools.
Right.
I don't know how
it's just
common
much
that
harder
is.
to find.
I don't know how common that is and how often you've run across it, but that story always sticks out in my mind with that player.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a ton of takeaways there. I think the first is, as an athlete, it does matter school by school, but most schools, by having sports, have established that that's a priority for them. And in every admissions class, there's no hard and fast, boundaries of what they're trying to hit, but admissions officers are trying to build a class. And part of that is, on a soccer team, they probably need a goalie recruit every couple of years. They need to have a certain amount of defenders. They need to, and they're relying on the coach to say, you know, again, with the schools that I've spoken to about this process, and most are pretty hush hush. They don't want to share specific details because there are not hard and fast rules. But the gist is that coaches at the Division III level can say, you know, here are my recruits. This is the program changing athlete. Here are their grades. Here's the next person. Here's the next person. And then usually what admissions will do is offer pre-reads, which is what you'll see with a lot of the higher academic NESCACs, the Centennial, the SCIAC out in California. And so recruits will have an idea on the number, as you mentioned, and on coaches get an idea about admissibility. And so I think, yeah, in that process, they'll spit out the number, which then they give to the recruit, which is what happened in your situation. And our advice to recruits in that situation is never accept the first offer unless it's well below what your family can afford. Do what the recruit did in this situation, which is use counter offers and say, hey, you're my number one choice, and only say this if you're honest about it. We don't, you know, we're not trying to just negotiate everyone down for the sake of negotiation. But if you've thought about it with your family and, you know, you've come to this decision that this is the school you want to attend, and it's a difference of, in that one, you know, they ended up offering 6, but the difference was maybe 8,000 a year. I think if you are that top, you know, in that tier of recruits that the coaches are advocating for, most D3s will be able to find something along those lines, or they can help you find a work study job. They can, you know, in college, to help with costs, I was a note taker. I was a paid note taker. So I was hired by the Office of Student Disability. And I would go to my classes that I always attended, and there was a student with a disability. I didn't know who it was. But I would take my notes, photocopy them, make sure they were organized. And then at the end of the week, I would submit them to the office, and they would give them to the student, and I would get paid for that. So there are countless ways that you can, you know, try to make up that gap. And I think the first one, as in your situation, is just asking the coach to see what they can do first.
Yeah, no doubt about it. My advice is the same as yours to all of our clients, and that's just be honest. Just be honest with everybody about what it is. Don't think of it as a Moroccan bazaar where you're trying to negotiate every deal all the time and everybody's hiding something and everybody has more to give, because I truly don't believe that that's the way most schools think and way most coaches think. I think they would much prefer you come in and say, Coach, I just need to be honest up front because I know you're an expensive school. I don't think that we're going to be able to afford your school. We have a budget of around 15, 16,000 a year, and that's all we have. And I know it's really expensive, and I don't want to waste anybody's time here. And just let them see what they can do, okay, with your honest budget. But if you're going, I got to have free, even Division I, yeah, good luck with free, with everything has to be paid for. And I would tell parents nowadays, Karl, that at least at minimum, set aside housing and food for your kids, okay? It's the tuition part that has more flexibility to it because there's not a hard set overhead cost per student. I mean, that exists in the financial in the financial aid department. They know what those numbers are, but they also have pots of money to set aside for that. But when you're asking somebody to feed you for free and to house you for free, I don't know. Not many situations in the world where a parent can boot their 18-year-old out of the house and ask other people to feed and house their children for them for the rest of their lives or for the next 4 or 5 years. It's just not super realistic. So if you can at least set aside that anywhere between 15 and 22,000, depending on whether you want to live in the Bay Area, New York City, or it could be 8 or 9,000 if you're in, you know, Nebraska, might be cheaper, you know, if it just depends on where you want to be and what your situation is. Understand that New York City real estate and San Francisco real estate and Los Angeles real estate is going to be more expensive to rent than it is in Iowa or Nebraska in the middle of the country. So if parents can at least set something aside for that. And by the way, also had a conversation with, at that time, he's not there anymore, but with the Amherst coach, a very well-known Division III school, very high-end academics. And he said, look, our dream is to find a kid who's a baller, who can really play, who's on full Pell, and has no money, like family is dirt poor. because that's like our school would easily accept those kids in and the kid won't pay anything. It's a almost a feeling of, they want to give back, right? They want to attract those students who have needs, but are really high-end academics and really good players. So if you can find us a 4.0 kid with a 1500 SAT who can play and has zero money, parents are dirt poor, maybe first generation, we would take those kids from you all day long.
Right. Well, yeah, it goes back to the admissions officers trying to build a class, right? And part of that, one of the metrics they look at, in addition to, regional diversity, racial diversity, they're looking at, socioeconomic diversity, and
Right.
and first gen, as you mentioned, like, has anyone in your family gone to college? These types of things that are stated priorities for the schools to help build a more, well-rounded, complete class. They don't want schools like Amherst, Pomona, as I mentioned earlier, Calvin. These schools don't want to just have only people from California or only people from Michigan, right? They're trying to build a complete class that adds to the college experience. You're not only learning your classes, but you're learning from the people around you that are from different places. They talk differently. They, grew up with different, grew up in different situations. So yeah, I think it just goes to show that no school is looking for exactly the same thing. And, what you have as a recruit might be exactly what a school is looking for.
Yeah, and then something else came to my mind when you were talking about the competitive bit. I know my son went to St. Francis in Loretto, Pennsylvania, a very small Division I school, and they were pretty good at the time. They were, in their conference finals 2 years in a row, and I think the first year they made their conference finals in the spring, they played Messiah. And for those out there, there's Messiah men's soccer has been legendarily amazing. Numerous national championships, and they got smacked down. My son's school got smacked down pretty good. It was like 4-1, something like that, the first time they played him in the spring. And I said, how is this possible, son? How do you get beat by a Division III school? He goes, no, it's not like West Coast Division III, Dad. You don't understand. This is like no Division III. These are all Division I kids. All Division I kids. Another friend of mine, Erica Sutter, she went to Johns Hopkins.
Oh yeah, their
And
women's team.
she was a Division I recruit, and it's full of Division I players, level players for Division I level players that have chosen to go to Johns Hopkins because it's one of the best schools in the world. And so this idea that I'm too good for Division I don't want to lower myself to playing Division III. Rather, I'm too good for Division III. I don't want to lower my standards by playing Division III because I've always been told I'm a Division I athlete. It's just a bad misconception of the marketplace.
It really is. And I think what helps with that is just context, right? If you ask most kids who say they're, they only want to play Division I, or they're probably not going to play in college. If you ask those kids and you say, have you ever been to a Division III game? The answer is most likely no. Because if you take a look at a map in your area and you just type in Division III schools, and you take a drive to one of those schools during your process, and you go and sit, watch a game, you could even message a coach and say, hey, coach, I'm coming to check it out. Would love to chat with you about the experience, maybe see the facilities, etc. Those hands-on, first person, chances to see a campus, to see the game live, see the speed at which the college game moves in comparison to high school, you're going to end up bumping into one of those Hopkins, Messiah type teams that is going to totally change your perspective on what the level holds. And, we try to promote anytime a Division III school beats a Division I team, because it does happen. It still happens. It's not like there's this hard division gap between D1 and D3. And a lot of times, as you mentioned with Hopkins, like, it is a D1 recruit, a borderline D1 recruit that's going to Hopkins because of the academics, or that experience that they want in addition to their sport. So
yeah, so boy, hopefully we've got some good takeaways from this one. I think if you could leave somebody that is at least open to finding their right fit, right? So they're not locked into, look, I'm never going to talk a kid out of, I'm not going to be able to talk a kid out of, I will only play D1 or I will quit the sport, right? That's a different, that D1 or bust mentality, I'm probably never going to change their mind. But if somebody's open to considering, I just want to find the right fit for me, And we're assuming, by the way, the one thing I will say about Division III is generally speaking, the schools that players have heard of that are Division III, the bigger name schools, are very hard to get into academically. They're very competitive. So the U.S. News and World Report, top schools in the world, when you go down, you find those D3s. Those tend to be the ones that people think of. But there are Division III schools, by the way, that if you're a 2.8 athlete, a 2.8 GPA student, that there are D3 schools out there that will accept you too, right? It's not all just the high end, correct?
Yeah. I think the key there is there's a difference between getting accepted to a school and being able to afford the experience, which most times the financial aid cutoff for big time merit aid discounts. So, we were using Pomona earlier, 61,000, maybe 65,000 for tuition costs. If you have, I haven't looked at their tiers exactly, but for a lot of schools, if you have a 3.0, you're getting $15,000 off tuition. If you have a 3.4, you're getting $20,000 off tuition. And if you have a 3.8, you have $25,000 off tuition. So I think it just goes back to the academics point that we discussed earlier, where, yes, you can get into the school, whether or not you can make it as affordable as possible, and try to reduce that burden on your family. That's the next level question. But I think I heard you getting to another one, which was just what type of advice, I guess, would I try to give to kids out there who are looking at D3 schools or kind of wondering how to start? Was that a question?
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's go there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I think the biggest thing, and I'm sure you see this in soccer as well, is like 99% of recruits are not going to be in that category that I talked about earlier. My teammates who are getting the letters from coaches, 99% are not going to have coaches coming to them, making recruiting really easy. And it's those high level recruits that are going to have that experience. I think what I try to always counsel recruits on who say, I'm starting the process, what should I do, is build your own list. Like, start from what you actually want and sit down and think about that at a deep level. Whether it's what part of the country you want to play in, what type of major you want to have in college, how far you want to be from home. Do you want your family to be able to come watch you play in games? Because I think, and then build a list of schools off of that, and then go and proactively recruit yourself to those schools. Reach out to the coaches, try to do campus visits, send them game tape. And I think that is the way to have a really solid college experience. Whereas the opposite is just taking in whatever recruiting offers, recruiting interest you get. Let's use Alaska State University that you talked about earlier. Right. But say you hate the winter and your family lives in Florida, they're never going to be able to come see you play. You're going to be miserable because the school year starts in September or August and runs through May. So you're going to have a lot of months of winter. And then, it's one of those things where, yes, you might be able to play if you accept that offer, but whether or not you're actually going to enjoy the whole experience. And let's say worst case scenario, you get hurt during your freshman year and career-ending injury, you can never play soccer again. Now you've committed to going to Alaska State University and you don't like anything about the school other than your sport.
Right.
That's just not a position. You haven't set yourself up for success at all. So again, take a moment while you have the time at the start of your process, build your list of schools based on your preferences, and then attempt to go out and recruit yourself off of that.
I think that's just really good advice, man. And I think that applies, by the way, to everybody listening, to every division or every school that you want to go to. If you're only going to a school because it's Division I, look, there are Division I schools in this country. There's one women's soccer team in this country, Division I, that couldn't even finish their season because they didn't have enough players, which generally says there's a lack of interest in that school for whatever reason. But they didn't even have enough to finish their season. They had to cut their season short after like 3 games. So just because it has a label to it, I always say, if you're that person who has to wear, Versace and Gucci and has to drive a Porsche and have to everything has to be about status symbol. I just feel like so many kids are looking at this college experience as the name on the sweatshirt is my status symbol. It shows everybody how wonderful I am because I made this team or this roster. And boy, I think the explosion over the last few years of the transfer portal kind of says exactly the opposite, that we see all these Division I kids trying to transfer, and not all of them, but the vast majority of them are, it's because they're not playing.
Yep.
It's because they aren't ready to compete for that starting spot is the reason they're transferring. Sure, there's some that are transferring up. I thoroughly acknowledge that. But you talk about the 1% that are playing at that level, and then what percentage of those did so well that they are going to transfer up? It's 1% of the 1%, maybe.
Yep.
If that. It's probably 0.7%. It's very small percentage that are in the transfer portal for those reasons. Most of them thought something was going to make them happy and then said, "Oh, this didn't make me happy.
Yeah.
This isn't really what I wanted."
And I would bet that, right, when that soccer playing experience is not available, whether it's like injury, like I said, or to your point, they're not good enough to get on the field, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We don't, most people don't come into college and start from day one as a freshman. I think that's a rare
Let's say
thing.
that first of all. Let's make sure that that's clear to the people listening, that at any level, most freshmen don't come in and make an immediate impact to a program. At any level, most freshmen. Good point.
Yeah. And then whether or not it's, for whatever reason, if you're not able to play, then you start looking around and say, wow, I really don't love Alaska State University classes. I don't have any friends here. I don't, like the clubs that they have. They don't have I want to be an engineer. They don't have an engineering major. So like, why am I here? And I think it's only in that moment. Unfortunately, kids don't think about this ahead of time. They think about it once they get to school. And then I would agree. I think that's why we've seen a proliferation of transfers, and I do think it is good. I think there's a lot of athlete empowerment is the right direction we should be moving, and that kids should have more ability to move levels. But I don't think it should be the first. You shouldn't just pull the escape hatch right when the first thing goes wrong and try to find another option, because the grass is not always greener.
No, and I think it's just a matter of finding out your whys before you go into the portal. It's really sitting down and being self-reflective, really understanding what you're feeling, what's going on, why you're making this decision. Because it's insane when I hear, well, all my teammates are leaving, maybe I should leave too. Well, first of all, who cares what they're doing? You worry about you. Second of all, like you said, if we're building into ourselves this habit of the minute something goes wrong, I can bail and go find something different, I think that's the wrong reason. There's so much to be said for delayed gratification. And I've noticed it. I'm old enough, I'm 61 now. So I've been around before microwaves, right? When even a frozen macaroni and cheese dinner, it took you 45 minutes to stick it into that oven and wait for it to heat up in that tinfoil thing it was in. It took time, right? And I'll tell you what, it got crispier on the top. I noticed that, and I like that crispy brown piece, and I don't get that in a microwave, right? And so there's things that you lose because of instant, right? So I think if you're feeding in yourself this instant gratification thing and starving out this delayed gratification thing, there's something so rewarding to, I want a new bike. Mom and dad said, well, go mow lawns. And then 6 months later, you've got enough money for your new bike, and then you purchase your own new bike. There's something so rewarding about that. There's such a good feeling you get out of that. And I think, and a greater appreciation for the value of what it took to get that bike. And I'm afraid, I hope we're not losing that, Karl. I hope we're not losing that in our society. This idea of, I can't have everything I want here and now. It's going to take some work to get there. Maybe I should hit the weight room harder. Maybe I should watch what I'm eating a little bit better. Maybe I should get a little more sleep, right? Maybe I should become a gym rat, not just during practice time, but on my own. Maybe I should ask the coach for a ball so I can go shoot on my own and play around on my own. there's a lot of things I'm not doing now that I could do to improve. What would happen if I just stuck it out and I did all of those things before I decide that I'm not good enough for this level and I should transfer?
Yep, that's true. And again, as we've both acknowledged, there are legitimate reasons for transfers, family
100%.
hardship, need to be closer to home to take care of a aging grandparent, that
Sure.
raised you as a child. Those types of things are very legitimate, and you know, um, yeah, we a D3 director in favor of athletes having more optionality. But with that said, I agree that if something is really easy, you have to ask yourself, do I actually want the result? Right? When companies, apps, all these things reduce the amount of friction that it takes to make a decision, they're trying to get you to do, like, there's a reason for that. And I think, you called out weightlifting, you called out skill development, working on your own. I think academics go into that category as well. Things that are, you don't get the final grade until the end of the semester after months of work, right? That you don't start to see muscle growth and weight gain with lifting until, a couple weeks, couple months in, or making it through the whole season without an injury because you really trained well in the off season. Your body was able to withstand all the, minor bruises and bumps that you got throughout the season. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm fully on board with that. I think as much as recruits don't, like, social media can be a tool. We're on Twitter, we're on X. Like, I try to get on there to just share information and make sure kids have access to it. And kids can use accounts, Instagram, Twitter, others, to get in touch with coaches. But I think the big advice I would say is try to put your phone down. Like, go get a group of kids together around your age. Maybe some are better, maybe some are worse, that are all trying to work towards the same thing, and have a commitment to put your phones away. Don't compare to everyone else on the internet. Compare to what's around you. Work on it. Be committed in that moment to what you're trying to do. And yeah, I think just focus less on what everyone else has and try to be where you are. Train as hard as you can for the goals that you want, not what everyone else has.
That's holistic. It's healthy, and that might be a good one to wrap on.
Yeah.
Karl, how can people get a hold of you if they want to know more about the Division III world? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah.
Where are you at? Where are you hanging out? On X,
I think,
obviously, right?
yeah, we give out a lot of free, tidbits on X, trying to promote the Division III level, what it offers generally. For more advice, kind of like, Don, that you and I have discussed today, I think we give out more concentrated topical posts in our newsletter every week that comes out on Substack. And you can either just Google that D3 Direct Substack and it should show up. It's called Recruit to the Real World. We're trying to take kids from their process, think about their whole process from the time they're a recruit all the way through college into the real world. So that comes out every week. And then otherwise, if you have a direct question, feel free to DM us on social, Instagram, Twitter, or you can email us. It is the letter D, then the word 3 spelled out. So d3direct@gmail.com. So any of those, we're here to help recruits and their families along the way. And we love questions because that helps us, give out more topical advice.
I love it, Karl. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. And best of luck, everybody. Inside College Soccer, we'll be back next week. We've got a couple more guests lined up. By the way, if you know somebody who's looking to try to transfer in the soccer world, we've got collegesoccertransferportal.com. Spell it out just like it sounds, collegesoccertransferportal.com. Independent portal that'll have junior college, NAIA, Division III, Division II, Division I, for coaches to look at. It'll be opening for the women this week and the men next week. And got about 200 college coaches out there sitting out there waiting to see what you have. So any players that hear this and want to get onto that, let us know. Otherwise, we'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, Karl.
Thanks, Don.